Hello and welcome to a lesson on An Irish Airman Foresees His Death by William Butler Yeats. So the best way to begin really is to read the poem, isn't it? Here we go. An Irish Airman foresees his death. I know that I shall meet my fate somewhere among the clouds above. Those that I fight I do not hate, those that I guard I do not love. My country is Kiltartan cross, my countrymen Kiltartans poor. No likely end could bring them loss or leave them happier than before. Nor law, nor duty bade me fight, nor public men, nor cheering crowds. A lonely impulse of delight drove to this tumult in the clouds. I balanced all, brought all to mind. The years to come seemed waste of breath, a waste of breath the years behind, in balance with this life, this death. Just to interrupt a second, let's talk about how this lesson will actually work. First, I'd like you to read the poem. Hear it, feel it, absorb it, muse upon it, visualise, imagine, empathise. Then you can listen to what I have to say, both to explicate it and to inform you, but also to model how to think about literature, as you are, of course, apprentice literary critics. After that, you'll need, of course, to pause and reread for yourself. Pause to think, with some directions about how to do so. Then after that thinking time, make some notes. I'd read the poem again with further directed attention or applying some inputted new ideas. And again, you'll have to pause to think, then pause again to make some notes. So in other words, the key is not to just listen to me, but to use this lesson as a model of how to think. To use this lesson to reread for yourself. And to spend time really trying to make notes that actually have come from you pausing to think. How the lesson doesn't work is by you madly scribbling ideas that I say, or by you skipping bits in order to make notes without engaging yourself, or just looking for the handy internet info, or you sitting here for far too long or too short a time. So with that in mind, let's crack on. Let's read the poem again, and this time really try to empathise, really try to visualise what's going on, really try to feel the movement of the poem, and ask yourself, is Miss Wilson performing this right? An Irish Airman foresees his death. I know that I shall meet my fate somewhere above the clouds above. Those that I fight I do not hate, those that I guard I do not love. My country is Kiltartan cross, my countrymen Kiltartans poor. No likely end could bring them loss or leave them happier than before. Nor law, nor duty bade me fight, nor public men, nor cheering crowds. A lonely impulse of delight drove to this tumult in the clouds. I balanced all, brought all to mind. The years to come seemed a waste of breath the years behind, in balance with this life, this death. So I found myself empathising not so much with the Airman the time I read it. I realised that actually for me, this is a poem in which the Irish Airman is someone I cannot actually fully empathise with. I'm not Irish, I've not fought in a war, I'm not an airman, I'm not foreseeing my death, and I'm not even a man. I felt as if this was a strange kind of struggle that I was listening to. The first time I read it, I was captivated by the first two words. I know that I shall meet my fate. I was captivated by the I, the sense of an individual person speaking their mind, really communicating their complicated sense of self. But this time round, I realised as I came to the end that this person saying, I know, I shall, with more certainty, meet my fate, as if this is something very concrete going on, and making statements about who he sides with, my country is and my countrymen are, and then making denials of how much his work in the Air Force would actually bring these people happiness, saying there would be no likely increase of happiness to those poor people. I realised that all of that actually ends up being much more subtle and much more balanced, as towards the end of this list of denials, I don't hate the people I'm fighting. I'm not actually fighting for those that I love. The people I love will not actually be affected by what I'm doing in a positive way or particularly negatively. It wasn't the law, or it wasn't some kind of patriotic duty. It wasn't politicians, and it wasn't the idea of crowds cheering me. It was none of these things that made me fight. In actual fact, we get a sort of confession, a lonely impulse of delight that drove to this tumult in the clouds. But that confession is nowhere near as certain as the beginning suggests. I know I shall meet my fate. The idea of knowing that you're going to die seems bizarre to compare with having a lonely impulse of delight, a moment of ecstasy in the sky. It also seems as if the idea of a little impulse is at odds with this poem, which is so carefully crafted to describe a balanced decision. And indeed, we're told that this tumult in the clouds, this fighting that takes place, perhaps also has some kind of parallel to the tumult of ideas the airman was struggling with before he decided to join the Air Force and involve himself in World War I, which is what this refers to. And I think the line that shows us this balanced sense of somebody actually choosing to take part in a difficult thing, somebody feeling conflicts, all these conflicts between the different parties involved in the war that he was seeking to join. The difficulty here, I think, that we're being shown is in fact this is a mature person who balanced all. The idea is one of balance. He comes to this settled decision, I know that I shall meet my fate, and a settled understanding that this will be somewhere and in indeterminate clouds. He knows he'll die, but he doesn't know how. He knows that he doesn't need to protect these people. He knows he doesn't need to have regard to these people. But he nevertheless has balanced all of this up. He's brought it into his mind, his mental space, the upper part of his self as a human being. And he has discovered that actually he might as well live in the moment, because the years to come would have no point having breath in them, and the years behind, where he has been alive, would turn out also to be a waste, if in fact he could not fully take part in life as it happens. So it's a case of all of the waiting, all of the sitting, all of the doing nothing being balanced up with the idea of this life, this death, and the deictic pointing out here of the this life, this death. These are the two things in balance: life, death, kind of on a sort of weird seesaw of a moment, a weird seesaw, a weird tipping point, a weird moment of potentiality in which one could be about to die or one could be about to live. And what it seems this airman, according to Yeats's view of things, is considering is how being involved in a dogfight in the skies in an aeroplane would encapture this impulse of delight. It would allow him to take part in a tumult which, in its potential oppositions of life and death, 1 minute we could have life, 1 minute we could have death, just as clouds either could go away and give us fine weather or could rain and cause a drenching. It seems that this life-death choice is almost on a par with that kind of inconsequential idea. So it's a very curious poem that seems to be about the ultimate loss or the ultimate gain. It seems to be a poem of balance, but in actual fact, after this balanced reasoning, what it's espousing and what it is encouraging is an attitude that taking delight in a moment of individual capacity, taking delight in the opposition's tumult, is the best thing that a person could do. So now you need to pause and think. I've given you my rambling impressions as I reread the poem just now, but before you reread the poem, ask yourself, who do you think is talking? I've told you, an airman. But is it a particular airman? Is it, in your mind, solely a World War I airman? What do you feel they are really speaking about? How do they feel about it? I've suggested some big overview ideas, but how do they feel about it from the beginning to the end? And how do you know? Now, of course, the how do you know question is actually talking about AO2 analysis and close reading. So what you need to do now is reread this poem and build up the impressions by annotating the answers. I'll read it to you once more, again differently. If you wish, you could try to annotate it as I read it. Or, of course, you could turn off the sound and read it for yourself quite happily, annotating away. An Irish airman foresees his death. I know that I shall meet my fate somewhere among the clouds above. Those that I fight I do not hate, those that I guard I do not love. My country is Coultartan cross, my countrymen Coultartans poor. No likely end could bring them loss or leave them happier than before. Nor law nor duty bade me fight, nor public men nor cheering clouds. A lonely impulse of delight drove to this tumult in the clouds. I balanced all, brought all to mind. The years to come seemed waste of breath, a waste of breath the years behind in balance with this life, this death.